Australia response to COVID-19 deserves a global encore. The Australia response to COVID-19 has been envied by many countries. Dr. Fauci recently praised the country for being a world leader in containment and management of emerging variants. As of March 23, Australia only had 5 recent cases of COVID-19, originating from citizens returning from abroad. When COVID-19 first became a threat to Australia, the federal government quickly responded by closing international borders and implementing a mandatory home isolation program. The Sydney Opera House was able to present the Italian opera, Ernani, by Giuseppe Verdi during the pandemic that is still gripping the world. In the unique case of the production world, the Sydney Opera House presented the Italian opera, Ernani, by Giuseppe Verdi during the pandemic that is still gripping the world. William A. Hazeltine, an American scientist known for his groundbreaking work on HIV, AIDS, the human genome, and other important activities, highlighted the success of the initiatives taken by the Government of Australia at the first outbreak of COVID-19 in one of his treatises on the subject. As of March 23, 2020, Australia only had 5 recent cases of COVID-19, originating from Australian citizens returning from abroad in quarantine at the hotel that housed them. When COVID-19 first became a genuine threat to Australia, the federal government quickly responded by closing international borders and implementing a mandatory home isolation program for returning Australian citizens. The states and territories also temporarily closed their borders for the first time since 1919 during the Spanish flu pandemic. These early border closures halted the rapid spread of the virus and allowed Australia to build a very effective test and tracing system in controlling the spread of the virus. Even after experiencing a second wave, cases never increased by over 1,000 for a population of 25.36 million. This was a success achieved without vaccinations, whose program began on February 21, 2021, with cases remaining low for almost 6 months. The closure of state borders also meant that states like New South Wales and Western Australia were able to reopen their local economies after just 2 months of lockdown. While Australia has significant advantages in terms of geographic isolation and population density, there is still a lot we can learn from their response. Australia's success demonstrates that a strong public health response enforced by a democratic government focused on vigilant testing, traceability, and quarantine is key to fighting a pandemic. Aside from a few short stops in some states, most Australians enjoy a relatively normal life with the production of the musical Hamilton, USA, which recently opened in theatres in Sydney at full capacity. The Sydney Opera House, one of the largest theatres in the world, staged theatrical activities open to the public during the pivotal period of the pandemic. The Sydney Opera House is the only opera house in the world that has had live performances from January 2021. This unique exception in the world was experienced by Laura Galmarini, collaborator of the Teatro alla Scala in Milan. Here, eTurboNews interviews Ms. Galmarini. ETN, why did you find yourself in Sydney in January 21, a period of closure for travel abroad? Laura Galmarini, in September 2020, I received the proposal to collaborate in the re-installation of the opera Ernani by G. Verdi at the Sydney Opera House, directed by Sven-Erik Bechtold. I accepted the role of revival director since it was the same staging for which I had worked at the Teatro alla Scala in Milan in 2018 as assistant director. My first approach to Australia was from the hotel window where I spent the mandatory quarantine for 14 days. ETN, what was the impact with Sydney and its inhabitants after the quarantine? Laura, I love the city and the incredible nature that surrounds it very much. From a professional point of view, I have had excellent meetings and collaborations that I hope can continue even in less complicated times. ETN, the Sydney Opera House opened to the public in the middle of the pandemic. What was your impression? Laura, it was exciting to see the audience back in the theatre at a time when Italy was still a long way from this possibility. Obviously, there was no lack of difficulties during the testing period, which lasted about a month. This condition requires a massive commitment in addressing the issues related to the pandemic. The large cast of soloists, the scenic mass of the choir, and the actors had to wear masks and undergo swabs every 2 weeks. However, this did not affect the artistic choices of a production that includes a packed stage, as expected. Thanks to the attention and professionalism of everyone, we were able to go on stage without masks and present the show to the public on February 2, which applauded the opera in Australia for the first time and the skill of the performers. ETN, your impressions upon returning to Italy? Laura, unfortunately I returned to a country that was preparing to enter Zone Red and with the doors of the theatres barred. However, I took advantage of this time to work on creating new projects. ETN, at the moment of our meeting, Italy is preparing to return to a new life. What are the projects of the Teatro alla Scala, the primary seat of your activities? Laura, La Scala is reopening its doors to the public and I, as assistant director, will soon begin rehearsals for the opera La Nozze di Figaro, a historical edition created by Giorgio Strella for La Scala in 1981. I am working on the design of the installation of an exhibition in Milan, which combines the efforts of many associations active in the area for the fight against HIV/AIDS and which will retrace the fundamental stages of the AIDS pandemic to look to the future with hope. Laura Galmarini, 1991, is an Italian director and set designer. Since 2014 she has been working at Teatro alla Scala assisting directors De Anna, Guth, Wilson, McVicar, Bondi, Asagaroff, Flim, Pelli, Cavani, and Martoni and for the historical revivals of Zeffirelli, Chirot, and Strella. Credits include work at Accademia Teatro alla Scala, Cantiere Internazionale d'Arte, Montepulciano, Tuscany, Teatro San Carlo, Naples, Duomo Rooftops, Milan, Festival Puccini, Torre del Lago, Tuscany, Savonlinna Opera Festival, Finland, and direction of L'Elysée d'Amore, Ragusa, Sicily. #Rebuilding Travel